Hello, and welcome to the Figuring Things Out podcast. Inspired by our favourite metaphor, each series explores various ideas around a given theme. This allows us to take a journey through a wide range of perspectives and travel towards greater clarity. For our first series, we'll explore the question, what is movement? And in the process, speak to 5 teachers, performers, and all-round wonderful humans. Okay, so welcome to the Figuring Things Out podcast, Jon Yuen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here.
Wonderful. So before we came on, I did a bit of research, obviously, and I wrote some words down that I thought related to you quite nicely. They were soft, relatable, and clear. And you have this lovely line on your website that says, "Your body is not a temple, it's home."
Yeah.
I thought this was really lovely because it really shows, at least from my perspective, this idea of you having this rare habit of simplifying something or communication without losing the inherent value and meaning. And I really appreciate about this in your work. It seems to be somewhat intentional.
Yeah. I mean, marketing wise and communication wise and coaching wise, I try to focus on the things that are familiar, and for us to, I guess, just encourage people to appreciate what's familiar. Like a home can be as lovely as a temple. It can be of more value even if we just allow ourselves to treat it that way. The same thing with many things that relate to training and to diet and to relationships and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think getting closer to home is just a good philosophy when it comes to living, in my opinion.
I like it very much. Can we maybe go a little bit backwards in time and know a bit about Jon, Jon's practice, Jon's personal kind of passions, inspirations, and then maybe we can move forward towards your work. So first of all, maybe what are you currently working on?
Right now, I am kind of I'm confronting my idea of what my body is capable of doing as it is growing in years. So basically, I'm trying to assess what sort of frequency and volume and blah, blah, blah that I can progress from and remain uninjured from. So that's like an underlying, I guess, principle that I'm trying to address in my training right now, because I am getting older and I can't deal with the same type of frequency and intensity that I could benefit from in the past. But outside of that, I follow, the I guess perspective that I have of what a movement practice is for me, which is simple. It's about how I relate to myself. It's about how I relate to objects or environments, and it's how I relate to other people. So me and me and me and it and me and them. So I have, a softer type of practice that I guess is somewhat more, I guess you could call it more introspective. I just focus on doing something that is of a lower intensity, because a lower intensity inherently has more variety. And it also allows me to pay attention to, I guess, like smaller details when it comes to how I feel physically. And then I have a practice that is more high intensity, more strength training. And this is also, a way of kind of investigating one's own relationship with, your ideas of inhibitions or limitations and all of that. And it's also a way for you to just get stronger. And then I have climbing and swimming. And then I have, those sessions when I meet up with friends and interact physically with them. Sometimes it can be like a bit of wrestling. Sometimes it can be, giving each other challenges, kind of getting to play with other people's ideas and that sort of stuff.
And so do you really intentionally set up your training with these let's say, goals in mind? For example, you have like a social session and then more of like a higher intensity session? Or do you still use the like classical types of setups, like pushing and pulling, or upper body and lower body? Or how do you go by like structuring your week?
So when it comes to how like the me and me sessions, like the ones where I just write a program or like a workout, those are structured. Even like the more low intensity type of movement, creativity, exploration stuff, that is structured in some sort of way, usually by giving myself certain prompts or cues. Same thing applies to a lesser degree to the sessions where I interact with an object or an environment. I do have an idea of the intensity and of the like overarching goal of the session. But yeah, there's going to be a tiny bit less structure in those sessions. For the me and them sessions, those need to be flexible. If I come there with an idea of what we're going to do, then I basically take away the opportunity of getting other people's input, and that's not a good way of relating to your training partners or to any other people in your life.
Do you find it difficult being a coach, being in that role, or do you?
I mean, I like it a lot. So much of the people's expectations of you as a coach is that you're just going to tell people what to do. You're going to provide them with an answer. And the really boring part about answers in general is that once you give an answer, then people stop questioning. But more specifically, it becomes boring because you yourself become like your own feedback loop where you just feed answers and answers and answers. And then you need to stand firm on those answers. And then you become bitter and drowning in a pool of hubris, and that's not the way I'd like to go.
I agree. I feel it. So recently in one of your email, what did we say? Blasts, let's say. You spoke a bit about this kind of maximal training. And it's really nice that this idea of kind of giving like a low max.
Yeah.
Where does this come from? Where's the idea? Is it from the me and me sessions, or is it from the
I mean, it came from mostly, yeah, I guess me and me sessions. When I was doing a lot of workshops and traveling a lot, I noticed that my theory of what I was supposed to do and reality had a clash, and reality won. And my theory was, of course, that I had to do a minimum amount of work. Right, I had to do a minimum of 4 exercises and 4 sets, and I don't know, 7 reps, or a minimum of 45 minutes. Otherwise, it was not a valuable session. And then that didn't work, and of course, it didn't work for quite a bit of time because it takes time to change one's mind. But then I kind of got tired I got tired feeling that way, and I got bored of myself. So then I just stopped and thought about the issue and thought about, what could we do to kind of remedy this dissonance? And yeah, instead of giving yourself minimums, just give yourself maximums. You're going to do a maximum of 4 exercises this session. This session is going to be a maximum of 20 minutes or 16 minutes. You're going to do a maximum of 5 repetitions per exercise. And we can speculate about how suboptimal that is, but it is optimal in the sense that it at least made me want to do it, and gave me momentum, and it allowed me to work out. So that's kind of why I wanted to share this idea of give yourself a maximum, because then you give yourself permission to just do 1 rep. And if you give yourself permission to just do 1 rep, then I can pretty much guarantee you that you're going to do more reps, you're going to do more sets, and you're going to have a gay old time.
This podcast is currently a self-funded project. So if you're enjoying the conversations and would like to get involved and support us in creating more, please feel free to buy us a coffee with the link in the description. To see our coaching, courses, and event offers, please visit our website at www.figuringthingsout.com. individuality.com. For now, back to the podcast. Yeah, it's really nice to hear. I think it's very adverse to the classical communications of the culture. If we take specifically movement culture, the adage of training 4 to 6 hours a day and these types of ideas are very, I think, problematic, and they maybe confuse a lot of people. I definitely, coming into the culture, was quite confused at that, and really have been over the years trying to balance out kind of life outside of practice and seeing myself as a human outside of training, and then myself in training, and then coaching something separate. And then trying to work out, well, how many hours a day do I really want to give to this? And what am I gaining in return? Or is it taking away hours I could be putting into relationships or passions outside of physical practice? And I think it's a really nice communication, really giving this space to be okay with oneself by doing the minimum maximum, if we could say this.
Yeah.
I'd love your opinion on the communication that you perceive from the culture, and how you feel that as an individual, both as a trainer and as a practitioner.
The culture, even though it is on a global scale pretty small, it's still pretty big. So what I'm going to say to this is just based off of my very few observations of the culture. So yeah, bear in mind, this is purely objective and purely based off of my experiences. I think that we talk about movement too much as a status symbol. It's about being good because it's not the norm, or it's good because it's different. It's good because it's peculiar. It's good because it is in some strange sort of way more philosophically sound than another approach. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I'd be very surprised if anyone knew. But I think it becomes a problem when we talk about a movement practice as being superior to something else, if that's something that we give too much attention, because I mean, the main focus should be, do you like it and do you benefit from it? You as an individual. We talk too much about movement and not enough about people. We don't talk enough with people either, because it really is individual, what people enjoy, what people benefit from. So I hope that we can give that a bit more attention. I also think that we're a bit too strict. I mean, strictness in itself can be a good thing. I should know. I'm half Chinese, but strict for what reason? Strict for the, because you want more security. I mean, that's usually what strictness is there for. Do it this way, otherwise you're wrong. And if you're wrong, then that's a bad thing. So, hey, I'm going to give you some strictness so you feel as if you are 100% sure of what's going on and what's going to happen. We're not. Of course we're not. We have no idea what's going to happen if you do one particular thing. We might know a tiny piece of the outcome, but not the outcome for you in your multifaceted, multidimensional, very, very messy chaos of a life. We don't know. So instead of talking with so much confidence, maybe we can be confident in the fact that people be able to figure out things for themselves if we only kind of give them permission to find out these things. And yeah, I also think that we use too many big words. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I think it's, for me, what resonates a lot is this speaking from a place of vulnerability, coming from a place of, I'm doing my best, but I'm not 100% sure, because how can we be? Which I think feels like a nice place to be in. It's almost like a place of light improvisation, kind of dancing with something. One thing I struggle with sometimes, and I have a lot of people that I work with also struggle with is this like moving to a specific direction without clarity, or without a guaranteed end. Becomes a little bit, let's say, low-key stressful. It's like, oh, but what if I don't get there? And of course, this is life. But I'd love to know from your perspective how you yourself and how you then communicate that to others, as a good place to be, maybe, or as a place that can yield results.
Well, it's very difficult to give any type of assurance when it comes to what is inherently insecure, right? We know two things of the future, only two things. Number one, it's going to happen, and number two, it's going to be different. That's the guarantees that we can make. What I think it boils down to is, and this is going to sound very cliche, but it's kind of like giving people, it's ultimately about believing in oneself, right? Like, hey, we're going to do something. We don't know what the end goal is going to be. In the same way that you didn't know that you were going to be here 5 years ago, we don't know what's going to happen to you, to your body 5 years from now. But what we can say is, I believe in your ability to adapt to that situation. If you're able to kind of adopt a mindset of, I'm competent enough to navigate my own lifestyle. I believe that there is something inherently about me that's going to be able to take a future challenge and future unknown challenge and deal with it. That's kind of the only, and it's not even a promise, it's just a vote of confidence. That's the only vote of confidence that I can give someone. It's like, I believe that people are inherently incredibly capable of dealing with adversity, but they do need a bit of support. And hey, here's that support. I believe in you. You can do this.
That's lovely. It resonates. I really tried to think about this in a way that kind of fits in my mind. And something I came to was this idea of like a what, why, and how. And we've got this kind of what that we do, which is of lesser importance to the why, which is of lesser importance of the how. And really, how I feel it, if I choose to do things in a certain way, the how, the why then maybe becomes more clear, but it's also doesn't really matter, because if I'm doing something in a genuine or open or engaged way, like kind of encompasses everything anyway. And whenever I try to search for the what as the ultimatum, I must do the most efficient, I must do the best, I must do the strongest or best or hardest, I kind of missed maybe the why and the how. And if I focus too much on the why and I focus too much on the philosophy and the meaning, sometimes maybe it's just like an endless pit of asking questions to myself that I don't actually then do anything. And you get into this kind of self-fulfilling rut of doing nothing because you're asking why, and actually just doing something and having that kind of intention of how helps a lot, and really avoids that self-limiting questioning, let's say.
Yeah, I think, this type of internal conflict is caused by, at least in some way, due to the fact that we as people, we are in very few situations where we have to worry for our safety in the short term. Like, most of the risks that we take are long-term risks. And because of this, we don't get to build a whole lot of situational awareness, like what's going on right now that might not be beneficial or might be very beneficial. Just a quick sidetrack. One of the best coaching sessions I've ever had, or the best coaching sessions I've had, have been when I've gotten instruction for activities that are inherently, that bear an inherent risk. Usually water activities. So like free diving, surfing. These instructors, they were able to speak with a tremendous amount of confidence because they knew of the importance of their instructions, because those instructions could very well be the things that would save your life. And when they speak with that type of confidence, it's kind of infectious in a way, but it's infectious in a way that you become more focused on your immediate situation, right? So you build situational awareness. That situational awareness is what we want to try to cultivate more in our daily lives when the risks don't necessarily feel as immediate, because that's what's going to make you, able to adapt to the situations that you're going to find yourself in that you cannot predict.
Yeah, it resonates a lot actually on a different level as well of kind of things having inherent meaning and inherent value based upon their perceived risk. And I really feel it when I'm climbing or I'm hosting whatever, like a climbing class or retreat, and relating things to a more severe or more serious event or moment can really have quite a bit of value, because it's almost like people get triggered into a specific kind of clarity of focus. For example, maybe taking on a specific technique in climbing and then applying this on a rope, 10, 15, 20 meters higher on the rock. But then the next morning coming to a class and we're on, a playground, let's say, and trying to see this or feel this technique on crawling on the floor, but really trying to relate the feeling of what you felt on the rock, on the rope, to the floor. And it gives this kind of palpable sense of, I'm not just crawling with no risk on the floor. I'm really seeking or feeling that sense, that felt sense that I had the day before on the rope. And it really helps to dive a bit deeper into what seem to be menial tasks.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really nice way. I really try to use this in my own practice. For example, sometimes I might get a bit bored of doing pull-ups after doing pull-ups for 20 years. But actually, once they're enclaved in this greater meaning of, but actually, I've been working on this thing in my climbing, and this pull-up will help me get towards this greater meaning. It has something. It has that meaning that is, I think, palpable, or more palpable, maybe.
For sure.
Which is lovely. And
yeah, and it definitely beats someone telling you that you have to do an exercise in a specific way because otherwise your spine is going to explode. That there's a reason why that sort of instruction works. It's just a shame that we've gotten to a point where we have to create unverified theories to make certain things very important. But it's because we fail to address what's important for the individual. So we just make something that's supposed to be important universally.
Yeah. And I think also I'd like to speak a bit on goal setting and ask you, do you set goals? Do you use this kind of moral compasses or philosophical compasses to choose a goal for yourself or to choose an orientation? Or do you just simply explore with a certain intention and see what comes up?
I do set some goals, but very, very few. Like if I first set a goal that I wanted to be pretty important, I wanted to have a profound impact on my life, whether it be my personal life, my health, or my, let's say, my career. But in general, I just try to make sure that the things that I do align with certain values, and then I find ways for those values to be expressed through something that is repeatable in some sort of way. So, for example, like my values when it comes to health is that it pays to be healthy. It's a good thing, and health is not just about your body, it's your body in relation to its environment and to the people that are in your life. So I've tried to express that through this three-pronged approach to training, which is me and I, and me and it, and me and them. It's not necessarily a goal, but at least when it's not too specific, it allows me to pay attention to what's happening, because I don't get too focused on just one endpoint.
And then how do you communicate this to people that you work with? Do you provide them with something to help, or let's say to carve away the chaos
Um, well, I try not to change the way people set goals. If their way of setting goals doesn't work, then well, first and foremost, that's up to them to decide. But I do ask them questions about, the perceived benefits of this goal that they've set, and whether or not the process so far towards this goal has been beneficial to them. So just like asking them, does this work? Does this work for you? Is it going to be worth it when you reach that goal? But one thing that I try to focus on a lot is tracking. Like we need to, if we're moving towards somewhere, if we're moving towards a goal, then we should make sure that our steps are we're taking steps in that direction, and that we are in fact taking steps and not just walking and marching on the spot. I think that's pretty important, because you need some sort of objective, more or less, measurement that allows you to figure out whether or not you're moving forward. And most of the time, when a goal turns out to be completely useless, it's because you haven't moved forward. You're just walking in the same spot, because you haven't found a process that allows you to travel in the right direction. So we need some sort of measurement, a way of tracking your progress.
If someone comes to you and they say, I just love chopping wood, I love just day by day going through this grind, this kind of like CrossFit philosophy, let's say. I just love to go into the gym or go into the garden and take an hour and do dum 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 and leave.
Mm.
Do you see this as something that you can try and lead in a specific direction, or do you open up a space of exploration or curiosity, or do you just say, carry on? How would you work with this person?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that's awesome. I love the fact that you know what you like. But then I would also encourage that person to figure out what the minimum and maximum dose would be, effective dose would be. Like, all right, you like grinding, you like chopping wood. How much can you chop while still benefiting from it? Like, can we do this every day? Is that the goal? Do we want to find a way to do as much as possible from this and still benefit from it physically and mentally? Or do we just want to find an amount that you can easily recover from, that's going to make you progress? And if so, if we then have time left, would you like to explore some other things? Because life is big. Your life is broad. It can contain a lot of different things. Do you want to explore something else? Because it might just turn out that you don't only love chopping wood, you also like breaking twigs or climbing trees or uprooting redwoods. What else can we like?
So on that point, do you think it's valuable to encourage people to maybe take up adverse training or contrast? What I mean by this is, let's take person X as this person who loves chopping wood and they love this grind and this, maybe let's say, consistent and similar thing every day. Would you encourage them to do something maybe in the polar opposite end of the spectrum to allow some sense of balance, or where do you stand on this?
I would maybe ask if they wanted to do it, if that's been something that they wanted to do. Usually people have, I find at least, that people have a lot of different things they actually want to do, but they stop themselves from doing it because they become so attached to the feeling of proficiency in one particular field, and how they identify with that level of proficiency, that they don't want to feel like they're not proficient in something else. So just asking, like, is there something else that you like doing? And is there a reason why you haven't done these things? That's pretty important. But in terms of asking them to do something that is completely different, It is not my job to make a person balanced because I have no idea what it is. Right? Balance is a weird concept that we've kind of, it's a utopian concept. And it reminds me, have you heard of this parable of the two boats and the helicopter?
Maybe not. I do love a metaphor though.
Yeah. So there's a small town in which there is a church and in which there resides a preacher. And one day it starts raining hard, and the streets are beginning to flood. The preacher sits down by the front porch of the church and he starts praying for some sort of salvation. And as he's sitting there, townsfolk are going past in different boats and canoes and saying, Mr. Preacher, sir, you should join us. This doesn't bode well. And the preacher says, no, I trust that God is going to provide me with some sort of salvation. But it continues to rain. And all of a sudden, the preacher then has to go up to the balcony of this church because the water levels are rising. Another boat passes by, and the person in the boat says, sir, you need to come with us. We need to evacuate. And the preacher says, no, I'm waiting for salvation. And it continues to rain, and all of a sudden the preacher finds himself at the very top of the steeple of the church. And a helicopter flies by because at this point, no boats are in the area. And someone from the helicopter drops down a ladder and says, you need to come with us now. And the preacher says, no, I'm waiting for God. And the preacher drowns. He dies. And he goes up to heaven. And once he's past the pearly gates and St. Peter himself, he goes over to God and says, God, why didn't it save me? And then God says, dude, I gave you 2 boats and a helicopter. This is how we are with balance, right? Mm-hmm. We're constantly seeking for balance and looking for aspects or, totally different aspects in our training as a way of providing balance. But the fact of the matter is that balance is something that you create with what you have. Like if you have, let's say 20 kilograms and you can divide those evenly on a scale, that's the way creating balance. You don't need more weight necessarily. You have to figure out how to kind of balance your recovery, your stress, the way you work, your intentions behind your work with what you have, instead of only looking for new and novel ways of bringing you one step closer to a God that has already given you what you need.
Amen. That's great. So one thing that I really have been loving lately is almost choosing direction based upon more emotional things, that resonate based upon stress or fear even. So not only like, wow, I feel really excited to do this, but also, wow, I feel really scared to do this.
Yeah.
That's quite a nice thing to do. I think climbing affords that quite a lot. It affords this kind of social support that allows you maybe to step towards these areas of fear or frustration or pure exhilaration. Do you also allow for relations with this? Would this come under the me and I, or how do you see this in your practice?
Yeah, I mean, I like doing different things, and I like doing different things in different states. Different states of excitement, or for lack of a better word, tranquility. I think it's all worth exploring. For me personally, I find that interesting, and I have a kind of lifestyle that affords me that type of exploration. So I definitely think that's worth doing. And I think there's no better way of kind of investigating or learning more about yourself than a physical practice that allows you to explore these different facets of, emotional states.
On that note, do you see any differences, any major differences between, let's say, fitness culture and movement culture?
I mean, it's a tough question, because I mean there are differences totally, based on what we allow ourselves to do in the movement culture in comparison to the fitness culture. Um, we come from the same place in terms of fitness or exercise as a man-made construct, but we choose to make something that is inherently human more upfront in the movement culture, where we go like, oh, we should do these things that improve us, and we should play with these certain emotions, and it's supposed to be both beautiful and aggressive and all these types of things. Like, this is happening in the fitness culture as well. It's not like the people in the fitness culture don't have an emotional spectrum. Like, they're humans too. It's just that we've decided to create more marketing with it. um but like, who I think the fitness culture, there is going to be more, people are going to try to conform more to an established norm, whereas in the movement culture there aren't that many norms. It's a culture that it's still, trying to kind of create itself. And so there's going to be more exploration there, as it is in any type of culture that hasn't really put down roots yet. um, but yeah, I really don't know. It's like, I can only assume what people are doing and how they're acting on their emotions based off of what I see, and what most of us see is marketing. It's not, actual individuals' experiences.
Mm. Yeah, I really feel it. I think you said should actually a few times when you were referencing movement culture, and I really feel this in the communication from a lot of the culture, let's say, is that uh, it's almost like an outward, you should be doing this and you should be getting better by doing this. And it's almost like, from my small part of the how I perceive the culture, let's say, it comes across like this, rather than coming from a place of, uh, wow, this is so amazing, I just did this, or I've been exploring this and I think it's really cool. It's less of a prescriptive you should, and it's more of like a, wow, here's what I'm sharing.
Mm-mm.
And I wonder what, or how do you try and communicate this idea of movement to your audience?
I mostly talk about the things that I'm interested in, and that's the best I can do. The only thing a person is an expert on in the end is their own experience, and so I just try to mostly speak from my experience. And the cool thing about a person's experience is that it can inspire. We should just not allow ourselves to use our experience to dictate other people's experience. So yeah, just talk from my own experience.
Mm,
Give ideas, put something out in the world, and see how people react to it, instead of putting something out to the world that people have to chain themselves to.
yeah. How do you prefer to share? Because you do a lot of work on emails right now, and I'm very enjoying reading these kind of weekly or bi-weekly emails. But you also share in person in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I have my mentees, the coaches that I work with. I also have some clients. I try not to have too many. I have online courses where people can get in touch with me, and then there's, retreats and workshops and some classes here and there.
Mm.
That's basically it.
Do you have a preference as to which one you enjoy the most working with?
Hmm. I I like I really like mentoring other coaches, because it's so fun to see what people are able to create once you put them or encourage them to, go into that state of mind where they're supposed to create something, not necessarily recreate somebody else's success. That's a lot of fun. People come up with the most niche, most wonderful, weird little thing that so many other people can benefit from. And I also really like doing online courses, because it's a practice of empathy. Like, you have to try to put yourself into so many different shoes. You will never succeed, but at least you have to try really, really hard to understand how people react to this type of message. A message where you necessarily can't add on more nuance when they're watching the video, because it's a recorded video, right?
Well,
And how you can create lessons that kind of teach themselves over a course of several weeks, where you're not necessarily saying something explicitly, you're creating an experience that people can learn from. That's also a lot of fun. And I also just like not being, such a central piece. That's the issue with how we work nowadays, is that because it is very efficient to market yourself as a product, you are so very much encouraged to like put yourself in the spotlight. And it works, it definitely works, but it doesn't work for me, like on a personal level. It feels, I'm way more interested in seeing what people do with certain resources, instead of trying to do everything for them, and instead of trying to be in the spotlight.
well,
They're the main character, in my opinion.
how do you when you're going through this creative process of the course, let's say, how do you deal with the difference between kind of over planning and over structuring everything and maybe losing this relatability in the moment versus kind of loose planning or non-planning and just filming and improvising to see what comes up? How do you do that?
Well, you try to create a story. That's how I think of creating courses. You're just creating a story, and you have to make it abundantly clear that in this story they are the main character.
So
They're going on their own little hero's journey. Now, in order for that to happen, there are certain touchstones that need to be put in place, in terms of, a type of confrontation, a type of resolution, a type of lesson that comes from the resolution, maybe some conflicts that cannot be resolved, and all of that type of stuff. And yeah, creating those type of touchstones, like I know that this isn't terribly specific and it's not very well explained, but thinking about a course as a story that people can go through and to reach their own conclusions, that allows me to create a structure without necessarily robbing them of substance.
how do you think coaches could do better in communicating their message, especially related to movement?
Talk less. Talk less, ask more. Yeah, people are, don't take away another person's ability to explain to themselves what they need to know. People are very, very smart, very capable, and very wise. So sometimes we just need to step away so that they can kind of express themselves. Ask questions. Questions lead to multiple answers. If you provide an answer, then you're robbing people of the ability to even ask those questions that can lead to multiple answers. So ask questions. Be along for the ride. Don't be the main mode of transport.
And I have this idea. It's something like the teacher, trainer, therapist triad. And I feel like at certain times I'm somewhat more of a teacher and I'm trying to instill some type of education, let's say. Other times it's more of like a therapeutic session where we're just communicating and speaking, let's say, asking and listening. And other times it's more like a motivator or a driving force to do some work. Do you feel this? And do you feel like you sit in a certain place, or do you also try and move around this triangle depending on the individual?
Yeah. No, definitely. You definitely need to switch up your approach based on how the client is doing on that particular day, how they're feeling and what they need. But you know, you don't have to be psychic. You just have to ask, you know, what do you need today? Do you do you feel like you need to learn something particular? Do you just need to be pushed? Do you want to talk more about the details here? What do you need? Um, I mean, we have to, if there is one thing that we should recognize about the the movement culture and the fitness culture and the health culture in general, is that it is based on a everything is based on kind of a Western medicine type of perspective, where the main type of value that you provide is answers that are supposed to save your life from some sort of debilitating or really, really imminently dangerous disease. We are not in that situation. We have the opportunity to ask questions, and you shouldn't be afraid of asking questions, because it's going to lead to a better answer than the answer that you had prepared beforehand, you know.
Yeah.
So ask questions. What do you need?
Do you have any tips for young Jon? Like things you've learned and realized, maybe for your personal practice as a practitioner?
Um, Probably most of the things that I've said, you know, the the things that I'm mainly thinking of nowadays are lessons that had to be learned somehow, you know, in the past. So maybe I could have saved a bit of time, but you know, some lessons need to be learned, and some lessons can be taught, but most lessons need to be learned, and they're learned through experience. So I'm not sure if I would say anything except like keep doing what you're doing. You're gonna be okay. Um, keep keep rocking those tight jeans. You look amazing. You know.
Yeah. I feel like your perspective is really empowering, like empowers the individual itself. Um, I I wonder, do you have any ideas on like for you, what has been a good coach or a teacher for you? Who or what, or what values did they have or instill that you found to be resonant?
Well, um, the values, the teachers who I'm most fond of, or most fond memories of, are the ones that uh believed in me in some sort of way, where they they kind of informed me of some sort of opportunity or some sort of strength that I wasn't aware of, but they didn't necessarily try to dictate how I should apply that strength or how I should take advantage of that opportunity. They just went like, hey, you can do this thing, uh, try it out. And then they just made space for me to kind of make a decision based on that observation. That really works for at least my personality type. I'm not the kind of person that needs someone to be there with me for the entire journey. I'm more interested in, you know, kind of just being given space and also allowing other people space to uh, explore opportunities that haven't been explored yet. And so for me, you know, I wrote about this recently in an email. You know, for me, it is the music teacher that prompted me to perform at, you know, our graduation in primary school. It's the Norwegian teacher who encouraged me to write more, even though I hadn't seen that. I didn't perceive that as any type of strength of mine. And this was when I was back, you know, studying music. And it was the dance teacher who just pulled me aside after like me performing on stage when I didn't have any dance experience, who said like, you should dance. It is the teacher at my personal training school who said, I would like to experience being your student one day. Like most of these people I haven't talked to since. It's not as though they have to be companions for the rest of my life. But they provided me with an entirely new perspective that they encouraged me to explore. And those tiny, small acts, those kind of demonstrations of belief, more than anything, those are the things that have made me into who I am today.
Really nice. You speak a lot about writing, and you write a lot, and you have this, as I said at the beginning, this lovely skill of giving some simple but deep at the same time advice or thoughts. And I wonder, have you practiced writing? Do you have a specific practice in writing? Is it just simply you get things down and you have a certain way, or how does this work for you?
I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know how it works. I recently had a conversation with my girlfriend about this, where I just said, I don't know whether or not writing is good or bad. I have a really hard time like explaining why something works or doesn't work. But I know what I like and I know what I don't like. That's ultimately it. And so I just try to write things that I like. That's really it. And then after I've done that, I step away from the keyboard or from the pencil. I take a little break, and then I go, okay, now I've written what I like. Now what do they like? And when I think about I think about, all the lovely people who spend time reading these emails. And I try to think about, like, what are the type of responsibilities do they have? What other things are crowding their screen right now? What do they feel? What do they see as important right now? Based on, I can't truly know, but I can know based off of what is going on in media or in the global political landscape or something like that. And usually when I think about what other people like, the result is that I end up deleting like 2/3 of what I write, just because I care about people's time. I don't want to take up too much of their time. Because again, I don't want to be, I don't want to be a central piece. They are the central piece there.
You keep the outtakes, the things you delete?
No, I delete it. No? I delete it, except for like certain paragraphs that I like, where I go like, okay, this maybe I can use for something else. I don't know.
Well, there's so much value lost to the ether.
Yeah, but it's kind of like, I like that idea. I like the idea of things that are not written down, stored, because it just means that it's up for grabs.
What is Jon passionate about outside of physical practice?
Animals, primarily my 3 emotionally unstable cats, my family, my friends, reading, especially like fantasy and sci-fi. That's what I spend most of my time doing when I'm not working out or working, or spending time with family and friends or my cats. But the thing is, like, the reason why I'm so grateful for just this concept of a movement practice is that a movement practice is so many things. I mean, like, objectively speaking, what is movement? Well, it's a control, like, it's voluntary and involuntary contractions of muscle fibers orchestrated by, the brain and the spinal cord, which can lead to, the generation of force that allows for articulation at various joints. So we have extension and flexion and circumduction and abduction, adduction, etc., etc. But it is also pushing, pulling, hinging, and squatting. But it is also lunging, and it's also cutting, and it's jumping, and it's leaping, and it's trotting, and it's plodding, and it's shoving and pushing and pulling and rolling and tumbling, and it's being able to stand back up. It's also LARPing. It's also historical European martial arts. It's also jujitsu, and it's also judo, and it's also just roughhousing. It's also just arguing with your brother verbally and physically. And it's also, taking a walk, but it's also taking a stroll. It's also gallivanting. It's like, it's everything. So that's why I try to have a fairly broad perspective on what a movement practice is, so it can allow for the inclusion of more things that are already out there, instead of me having to try to come up with some sort of unique method that I'm supposed to sell. Because that's kind of what's happened. Movement culture is movement industry. And by making it into an industry, we're robbing people of wonderful experiences that are already out there. Because maybe locomotion isn't what you should be going for. Maybe it's prancer size. Maybe it's unicycling. Maybe that's your jam. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing that there's already an established culture and community of unicyclers out there that you can be a part of, instead of me telling you how to locomote? Isn't that like just like one of the most wonderful things? Because isn't that just you interacting with the world instead of becoming a student of somebody else's school?
But also maybe hasn't got the culture surrounding it that can give you so much more.
Yeah, exactly.
I really felt that a lot. Is this I think one of the drives for me moving towards climbing is that surrounding culture of new and interesting people diving into this specific practice, and it's like, wow, okay, there's people here. I don't have to be in the park by myself for 3 hours doing this thing that I was told to do, which is really nice, really special.
Yeah, it's people here who don't necessarily need to teach you anything, because their teaching is their main revenues, like their main way of creating revenue.
Yeah, so much. What are you excited about in your work right now? Is there something that you're working on, or something you're doing that is really...
Yes. Too many things. That's usually how it goes. But right now, I just started these kind of recurring online events for something called the Huddle. And the Huddle is basically online calls where I invite aspiring or established trainers, and they get to join a call, and they get to learn from people who aren't business coaches. They aren't creative design entrepreneurs, mentors. They are trainers. I want people to learn from the people who've been in the industry for long enough to understand what it takes to create a sustainable and long-term career. Because one of the greatest risks in the movement culture right now is that the movement culture was created at a time where social media wasn't so much dictated by the algorithm. Now that it is, our thoughts around the practice are conforming to what the algorithm wants. And I know this sounds a bit conspiratorial, but really, we have to acknowledge that without social media, movement culture would not be a thing. But now social media has changed, which means that movement culture, what it can be, is also changing in a way that I fear is it's going to lead to some short-term successes professionally, and some long-term disappointments physically, practice-wise. So in these calls, I'm basically just inviting people who do the work, and who do the work very well in terms of the coaching aspect, but also who do good work professionally from a business point of view. So in these calls, I invite these great teachers, Like before we started recording this, we spoke about Harry Williams. He's going to be next up. And basically, we get to pick their brains about how they run their business. For me, this is the best way that I can express my appreciation for or to the community and for the culture, the potential of the culture. Because the people who really decide what movement culture is, well, they're the ones who stay in it for long enough. And for that to happen, you need to be able to have, set up a decent business. And these people provide the input and the inspiration that we need for that. Because really, I really care about my work environment, despite the fact that we're sitting pretty far away from one another right now. We do share an office. It's just that our cubicles are terribly tall. And this office space, it is so fragmented right now. It feels like there's a tremendous amount of distance between us because of the adversities of professional life and the adversities of the perceived life that we each have on social media, or through social media, I should say. But we are colleagues. We are colleagues, and we should help each other. And we can learn from people who really knows what it takes. And sometimes that is not the most tempting answer. It's not the most obvious answer, but sometimes it's a better answer. And sometimes it's just a better question.
Beautiful. Where can people find this and you?
So all you need to do is to sign up for the newsletter. When you do that, you get the option of signing up as a trainer or an aspiring trainer. And if you do either or pick either of those two options, you will be basically invited to these calls, and they're free of charge.
Wow, really special. I would love to finish, Jon, with maybe a big circle. So at the beginning of the call and in the intro, we talk about this kind of the concept of the podcast, which is this metaphor that I love. It's 5 blind folk meeting the elephant, and they come into the elephant and they feel each of them individually and independently, and it's only once each of them brings each of their perspectives together that they get this greater clarity. And I wonder for yourself, do you have any metaphors or any parables aside from the helicopter and the 2 boats that you'd like to share to finish today?
Sure. There once was a ferryman and a scholar. The scholar boarded the boat, or the ferry, I should say, and was intent on crossing this river. The ferryman starts taking the scholar over, and the scholar asks the ferryman, "Tell me, sir, do you read?" And the ferryman says, "No, sir, I have no education. I cannot read." A couple of minutes pass, and then the scholar asks, "Tell me, sir, can you write?" And the ferryman says, "No, sir. Like I told you, I have no education. I cannot read or write." A couple of minutes pass, and the boat or the ferry jolts a bit and starts taking on water. And the ferryman says to the scholar, "Tell me, sir, can you swim?" The scholar says, "No." The ferryman says, "That's a shame, because we're sinking." And I guess what I appreciate about this story is, just think about, don't worry too much about whether or not your practice is philosophically sound. Don't worry too much about whether or not what you're doing is holistic or perfectly balanced. Worry about you. What do you need to survive the waters in which you currently reside? Is it swimming? Is it diving? Is it, I don't know, getting another boat? I don't know. You do you. Focus on your thing. Whatever it takes to keep you swimming.
Beautiful. Jon Yuen, thank you so much for this morning and the time. I appreciate you and your message very much as a coach and as a practitioner. So thank you dearly.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Will Brown. Thank you so much for listening. It's really a joy to have these conversations. Please feel free to like and share as much as you wish. It really helps us. And also keep an eye out for next week's release, where we interview yet another wonderful human. Again, if you'd like to see our coaching, courses, and event offers, please visit the website www.figuringthingsout.com. See you next time.